Welcome to the BusinessSpeak Podcast, where we take everything you need to know about being successful in business and make it easy to understand. Whether you're a longtime business owner, newer to this entrepreneur stuff, or hoping to run your own company in the future, you've come to the right place. Featuring your host, professional accountant and business guru, Mr. Chill. So relax and have some fun with us as we journey through Business Speak, the language of business, simplified.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Business Speak Podcast. I'm your host, Mr. Chill. I'm excited you're joining us today. We are on episode 7 of the Business Speak Podcast. For those of you that have been listening to us since our inception, thank you. For any new one who may be joining us, thank you. We're excited to share with you some wonderful opportunities for you to grow and enhance and otherwise find success in your business ventures. Today, I am joined by Cheryl NorthJohnson. We're going to introduce her in just a moment, but Cheryl, feel free to say hi.
Good morning, everyone.
Does it feel like we've been to like those like stereotypical meetings where someone introduces himself and I was like, "Hi, Cheryl." Anyways. Well, we're glad to have Cheryl with us today. Our topic of discussion for this episode is on all things bookkeeping. We've officially titled this episode, Bookkeeping, Having Numbers You Can Rely On. Now, some people might find bookkeeping boring. In fact, I might say many people would find bookkeeping boring, though you could probably say the same about accounting. However, if I'm not mistaken, we've got a guest today who is anything but boring and has found a way to have bookkeeping be meaningful and fun and helpful and awesome. So I'm going to introduce our guest, Cheryl NorthJohnson, founder of NJ Solutions, Inc. And I'm going to read a bio that she's prepared so you can get to know her a little bit, and we'll let her add to this as she sees fit. Cheryl has always been an entrepreneur. In her youth, she was active in the family's mini businesses. Her grandmother taught her accounting with ledger cards in junior high, and her father had her on the sales counter selling hardware, providing a foundation of seeing all aspects of running a business. Cheryl has always been drawn to systems by seeing the start, middle, and end points all at once. As accounting technology has developed, Cheryl was intrigued and learned the software as they developed. This experience has led her to become a leader in the accounting apps and to teach the automation of today. She is actively learning new ways to improve workflows, create organization in bookkeeping, to help her firm become more efficient, and to teach the systems to other professionals. NJ Solutions is how she empowers business owners with stress-free, paperless systems that provide reliable financial data. She is an elite certified QuickBooks Pro advisor. I'm sure there's a lot of other things that Cheryl could put in there. Now, you kind of alluded to this a little bit, but Cheryl, we're going to go off script here a bit. What do you like to do for fun? What are some of your, like, outside of your area of expertise here, what are some things that we'd find you doing for fun on a day off?
Yoga, spending time with my family. I have 2 dogs and a cat that we walk. The cat walks on a leash, so we're working on that. What else do I like to? We love movies. We're Marvel fans. We are Star Trek geekies.
Okay.
We like all that kind of that stuff.
Favorite Marvel superhero? Could you pick one?
Aquaman. Is
Really?
he Marvel or is he?
I think he's DC, actually.
He's DC, yeah. Anyway,
That's okay.
I like them all.
Okay.
I don't have a specific favorite, but I like them all. But, Jason Momoa is special.
Okay, enough said. Very good. Now, you founded NJ Solutions. I've never actually asked you this. I've sort of just made an assumption, but we'll just clear this up now. I'm assuming the NJ part of NJ Solutions is a reference to your last name, NorthJohnson. Is that correct?
It is, yeah.
Okay, cool.
It was creative.
I like it. Now, again, this podcast, we welcome any and all listeners and viewers, but we are potentially talking to those who are about to start a business, thinking about it, those who are already running a business, perhaps those that are in upper levels of management who are entrusted to run other people's businesses, all of these people could benefit from and would benefit from having clean, reliable books of which they could have reliable, timely financial data to which they would base their decisions on. So, Cheryl, maybe to kick things off, if you could sum up the role of a bookkeeper, what would you say?
Well, I could give you a technical term, but...
Well, you can start with technical if you want, but I'm more interested in what Cheryl would say.
What I would say, it's to help keep the business running, plain and simple. And without numbers of what your income is and what your expenses are, you don't know where the company's at. Organizing all of those, all the incoming and the outgoing money, when you have that set up in a system where it's reliable, people know what it is, they understand the terms that are being used, it becomes now reliable data where a business owner can look at that weekly, monthly, whatever that is, and they know where they're at. They know what their budget is. They know what their tax commitments are for the year. They know what their payroll is. They know all of that. And without that, you're running your business on a whim, which many people do.
They do. And you remind me of two things. The first is I've worked with several clients who will take I applaud them for this. They'll take the step, as often expensive and investment-wise, in hiring a business coach. And most of the time, those business coaches, the first thing they'll ask the owner is, where are your numbers? Do you know your numbers? Mm-hmm. And a lot of them will be like, right? Like they don't. And that'll be one of the first tasks that business coach will assign them is, you need to know your numbers. Exactly. We can't really set goals. We can't really help you achieve things. We can't really do much of any of that until we know where you're at, and therefore we can plan where you're going and how to get there. So that's kind of a key thing there. The other thing that you made me think of is you're dead on. I've seen a number of business owners who will run their business what we call by the bank account, right? Mm-hmm. Well, the bank says I have money, so I'm good.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's not factoring in what you still owe, what people owe you, expenses that you're not planning on, just sort of forecasting into the future, all things that would be helpful if you had full-on bookkeeping to rely on.
Exactly.
Would you agree?
Absolutely, I agree with that. And I've seen it where a business owner will, all of a sudden they have $100,000 in their bank account, and it's like, woohoo, there's my new truck. And the money disappears out of the bank account, and then tax time comes, and it's like, where'd that $100,000 go? Well, I spent it. And it's like, well, your taxes are $30,000, your personal tax is X, this, and we've blown that $100,000. Mm-hmm. And the money that they needed to put back into their company is gone. So, and it happens more often than what you think.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it's like, this is probably a pretty common occurrence. I was also like here in Canada, we have GST, and I'm sure like most places around the world, like in Europe, they have value-added tax, VAT, and in the States, they have taxes and sales tax and stuff. And as a business owner, most of you are going to end up having to collect that, and you're going to see this money in your bank account, and you're going to think, it's all mine. It's not. As you said, you don't only have income tax to pay, but you've collected funds that don't belong to you. Trust funds, you got to give back to the government. And so I find it's often a common thing where people will spend that too, because it's in the bank account. Well, then it's mine. Well, no. That would be nice to believe and nice to think, but it's not always the case at all. Now, Cheryl, one of the things I run into a lot, and I'm sure you see this possibly even more than I do. So I'm going to ask you what is potentially a biased question, but I think our listeners would appreciate your perspective on it. When you're a new business owner, it would be pretty common for you, and maybe not even just new business owners, but especially new business owners, it'd be common for you to feel like, I don't have money to hire anybody to do anything, so I'm going to do everything. So I'm going to be marketing, I'm going to be HR, I'm going to be everything. And included in that everything is I'll just do my own books.
Exactly.
Now, I can understand why people would feel that way. I don't have money to hire a bookkeeper. I don't even know what a bookkeeper would do. I'm hearing how easy bookkeeping software is, how much maybe now AI is coming into the picture. How hard can it be to just do my own books? So as a new business owner, it's very tempting for me to kind of believe all of that and feel like, how hard can it be? I'll just do my own books. When you have a business owner that comes to you or that you know of who's in that situation, what would you advise them? What should they be taking into account that maybe they're not considering if they're just like, I'll just do my own books?
Practices and best practices. If they're, number one is a bank account and a credit card. So businesses started, we don't have a credit card because we have no credit. We can't get one for the bank. But right off the bat, set up a separate bank account for the business. All the income, all the expenses get paid out of that. Number one. If you can't get a business credit card and you have 2 personal credit cards, designate one for the business and one for your personal. Keep it all separate. That will help in tracking because not everything's all mixed up. It'll help the accountant if your accountant is helping you at the year end, but separate all of that. If you're going to get software, be careful because AI is there, but the AI learns. And if you're teaching the AI bad habits, it's going to continue with bad habits. So yes, Danny DeVito says, get QuickBooks, it'll do it all for you. Yeah, it can, but it can also really mess you up. And that's an expensive fix. So what I say is have a meeting, right? Find a tax professional, find a business coach, find a bookkeeper, talk to them in the beginning, get advice. Maybe, they'll give you a starter package or something like that, or get you set up on the right track. If you don't want to do that, then at least get out a piece of paper and write down all your income, all your expenses, track that GST, do something so you know what's going on.
Okay. So kind of related to that is, as a business owner, it might be a common temptation for me to just do the bookkeeping myself. But something I also see a pretty common related similar concept is, well, my significant other will just do it. And I'll be like, do they have any experience or training? And they're like, well, no. And I'm like, you may want to revisit that idea, hiring a professional bookkeeper. So I'm assuming there's qualifications or certifications that you probably don't have to call yourself a bookkeeper, but to be a bookkeeper that is good and thorough and that a business owner can trust, maybe they would be ideal ones to have. What would a business owner look for? What kind of questions should they ask if they're interviewing a potential bookkeeper to know if he or she is going to be what they need and is going to be good? And I know that's a big question, so you can break that down into many ways you want to answer that as possible.
Well, the first one is for the new business owner is going to be budget. What's their budget? If they say, okay, I have $300, can I come to you? I only have $300, but I need to get set up. What can you set me up with? What can you show me how to do? That's pretty simple, right? And if, let's say, you're going to choose software, then that bookkeeper could help you out. They can get you set up, maybe provide you a chart of accounts, something like that, get you started off on the right track. Everybody's budget's different. So, right, that's the first thing, is determine what your budget is, how much can you afford up front, and how much can you afford going forward. So if you say, right now I have $300 I can designate to bookkeeping, and I can pay X per month, right? Then talk to a bookkeeper. When you're interviewing that bookkeeper, you want to know what software are they using? What's their method of data collection? What's their scope of service? And that's a really, really big one, is understanding the scope of service. So a professional bookkeeper is not a secretary. They're not typing your emails. They're not looking at your calendar and setting up schedules for you. They are a bookkeeper. If you're wanting an administrator person who's going to help you with those administration tasks, then that's another realm. Can administration people do bookkeeping? Yes, most times. If you go to an administration class or a school or take a course, there's going to be some basic bookkeeping in there. But the other thing is communication. Is how do you communicate with a bookkeeper? If you get them on the phone and you're talking with them and said, I'm thinking of hiring somebody, and they're like, yeah, okay, here's my package, 1, 2, 3, take it or leave it, thanks, I'm really busy, I gotta go. Is that the person for you? So like I always say, write your divorce, before you get married. Sometimes bookkeeping, I think, is the same way, because this person that you're going to hire is going to see everything. They're going to see all of it. And if they're not seeing all of it, they might be missing something. But defining the scope, defining your budget, and then what is your expectation of what you want. As a business owner, do you need to see your bookkeeping every week? Do you need to see it every quarter, every month? What is it that you want? What are you going to need?
And what if I, as a business owner, don't know what I want? Is that something that a bookkeeper can help me with? Or how do I go about figuring that out?
Depends on the bookkeeper. Every bookkeeping company is different. Everybody's service level is different. So if you're a startup and you just want to see, your monthly stuff, then, just say that. I want my monthly reports. I don't need it until, if I have it on the 10th of the month versus the 30th of the next month, is there a difference in my price? Ask those questions. Ask how they work, what they provide, the timelines that they provide. But for any business, I think you should be minimum looking at it monthly.
So that reminds me of a question, and I would appreciate your perspective on this. Like at our accounting firm, we do bookkeeping, but most of the bookkeeping we do is for clients that, for a variety of reasons, aren't looking at their books, and they're mostly just wanting them done in preparation for year end, which is why they have us do them. What do you think a business owner is potentially missing out on by only looking at their financials once a year with their accountant, as opposed to having bookkeeping by a bookkeeper that was done on a quarterly or monthly basis? What pieces of the puzzle are they sort of probably overlooking?
I just did a session on time theft, and they called it time theft. It's not necessarily, I don't like that word, time theft, but it's employee tracking. And if you have employees and, they're clocking in 15 minutes early, hanging out in the coffee room, we don't want people to do that, but those things do happen. They go for an hour and a half lunch rather than a half an hour lunch. Time tracking for your employees is a big one. Budgeting is the other, and your cash flow. And if your company is spending to the borderline every month of what your income is, then you're going to run into trouble in the long term. If you're not setting aside tax money every month or submitting your taxes every month, you could run into trouble with that too. And, with some simple reporting, you can see, what your income was. You can see your gross profit, your net profit, your overhead, all those kinds of numbers. But you need to be watching that so you know where you're at. Even if you're looking at, there's a specific one that I like to look at, and it's your expenses versus your profit. And it tells you your percentage of your income and how you're spending it, right? So when you look at that, and you look at that every month, and you see that one month you've had a huge jump in office supplies, and you're like, hey, like this is like we spent 80% of our revenue this month on office supplies. What's going on? Then was something misentered, or did you guys really just spend way too much that month? Like, was it budgeted? Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. But it lets you see where you're spending your money. It starts letting you put in controls, right? And thinking on terms of budgeting. So this month we're going to spend this much. We want to buy this new boardroom table, but we can't yet because it's X amount. We're only allowing this much per month in our budget. We have to wait 3 months to be able to afford that, right? So putting those kinds of things into perspective of setting up that budget, what your monthly spending is, and what your take-home salary is as an owner. And that one is a real variable because lots of times as business owners, we think that we're really valuable and we should be taking home all kinds of money. But in reality, our books are telling us a different story. And, we're nice people. Sometimes we give things away, we give our time away, and we should be charging for that. So our revenue isn't as high as what we want to be taking home. So we've got to pay attention to those things as well.
Sounds great to me. Now, you said something towards the beginning here when I asked you, what do you look for in a good bookkeeper? And you've kind of alluded to this concept a few times. some people would consider this a swear word if they're a business owner who's busy, or for different reasons I'll get into in a minute, but budget. You're like, what is your budget for a bookkeeper? And I'm like, what if a person doesn't know what their budget is? What if they don't have a budget? Or what if they're like a lot of people I meet that are sort of scared of that word? It's like Lion King when he says Mufasa all the time. Like, we're a business owner, we say budget, and you're like, oh no, we don't do that. It's like people are afraid to set goals because of a fear of failure or lack of control or lack of flexibility. If I set a budget in my head, I might think, oh, well, that means I actually have to be accountable, or that means that I can't have fun, or that means that I don't know all the reasons that I may struggle to hear the word budget and just, oh, okay, that's not for me. But clearly, even just hiring a bookkeeper, you need to know what's your budget for that. Being able to get a rein on your spending and be able to make your business more profitable, that would be far more effective if you budgeted for things and then we're sort of looking at those variances from time to time. So how do you help someone? I don't expect you to have a guaranteed answer to this, but just sort of off the cuff from your perspective, someone who's got, I'll call it budget fear. How do you help someone through that? How do you help guide someone to that? Or as a bookkeeper, what could a bookkeeper do to help someone create a budget if that's an area where they struggle?
Well, first is the bookkeeping, right? You've got to get the bookkeeping done. You have to know where you're at, what your revenue is, what your expenses are. How do we set up a budget for a business? Setting up a budget is, what's your income? What are your expenses? And then how do we want to grow that income? And how do we want to reduce those expenses? What are the expenses can we not reduce? And what can we guess going forward is going to increase? So if we want to hire an employee or even a bookkeeper, what do we have to reduce to be able to afford that bookkeeper? Or what do we have to increase in our revenue to be able to afford that? Because you've got to find that money somehow. No matter what, you have to have that money available. But when we're setting up a budget, we want it to be realistic, and we want it to be something that's going to provide value. So if we sit down and we say, okay, here's the budget, this is what your income is, these are what your expenses are, you got to cut back on all this fun stuff or this stuff that makes you want to run your business, it's no fun for the business owner. It's not going to work. And a budget can't be set in stone. It's got to be flexible. There's got to be understanding of why it's going to be flexible. But we also want it not to be restrictive. What about seeing it as goal setting? So if we say next month you only have this much to spend on these things, and the next month you meet that goal, hey, that's a great thing. Why not celebrate that? Look at it as a challenge. So like winning a new customer or a new job, meeting your budget can be a goal as well, and it can be something to celebrate.
That's a cool idea, actually. I mean, in my accounting training in school and in CPA and stuff, it was sort of we're going to do a budget because then we're going to do a variance analysis process, and we're going to compare what we wanted to do to what we actually did and see where we have room to make improvement. But in all of those discussions, ironically, it never actually came up the idea to celebrate when you have those even small wins, right? I set out that I only wanted to spend $400 on meals and entertainment. I did better than I thought. I only spent $300 this month on meals and entertainment. Well, yeah, that's good. I should celebrate that, right?
Yeah.
I never thought about that. That's
Yeah.
a cool idea.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, and the other thing is profit analysis. When you say that just to some business owners, that's going to freeze them. They're just going to be like, big words. I don't know what that means. It means a lot of work for me. It means a lot of stress at the kitchen table. I can't do that. Oh, I'm going to go the other way. And understanding business owners and how they think, and how so many entrepreneurs have that free spirit, fly with the eagles kind of attitude and personality. As soon as we put restrictions on them, they freeze or flight. They go into those two modes. And understanding business owners that way, when we're not restricting them and putting them in a jar and saying, this is the only way you can do things. I find that if I set out things where we set up goals for them, make it more flexible, then they are more successful because we're not trying to contain them.
Yeah, there's a business, I don't know if she would call herself a business coach. More like a life coach, I think, is what she more focuses on. But she taught something recently that I really kind of like. She was talking about your calendar and sort of that same Mufasa or budget concept. When you talk to a business owner about their calendar, that seems like that's looking at it from the restrictive side. Here's what here's what I have to get done today. Here's the appointments that I have to go to. And it's like, here, have to. And so her approach was, let's look at your calendar for the next 6 months or a year, and let's put on it the things that are going to light you up inside. Let's put on it the things that are your top priorities. Forget about what I got to do today because I'm putting out fires all the time. It's just, if there was no fires and you could completely plan your ideal life, what are you going to put on your calendar? That's like the top priority, most important, whatever. And celebrate the fact that you're scheduling that into your life. Mm-hmm. And then you would be surprised how much easier it is to fit that in on top of everything else because you put it in first, right? And you get excited about it because I know that this is a grind week, but I know on Saturday I've already booked in that I'm taking this vacation or I'm doing this massage or whatever it is that lights you up inside, and it gives you things to look forward to despite and through the harder times. I never thought about this till now, but that could be looked at the budget is the same way. I can look at a budget as this is telling me I can only spend this, and this is telling me that I can only do that. Or you could look at it like, what, if I hit all my goals this month, I'm going to profit $2,000. I'm going to be able to finally give myself a nice vacation, or I'm going to be able to take my family somewhere. I'm going to be able to hire an employee to help, lighten the load, or any of these things that it's like, if I budget ahead of time, I'm actually planning for these things to happen, and that gives me things to look forward to, as opposed to viewing it from a restrictive lens.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
That's really cool. Now, Cheryl, one of the reasons, I know lots of bookkeepers, not too many that I think I would overly, highly, no questions asked recommend. You're one of the few.
Oh, thank you, Corey.
And one of many reasons I think that's the case for me is because I find a lot of bookkeepers are focused on the task of doing bookkeeping. And some of them are okay at it, but I like how you seem to be, if I can use this strong word, passionate about bookkeeping. But if I had to venture a guess, I don't think it's because you thoroughly enjoy sitting in front of a QuickBooks screen or a computer keyboard and typing data in or reconciling accounts. I think it's because you see a bigger point, a bigger picture, something else that it draws you to finding that an enjoyable way to spend your time. Maybe we'll venture off the technical side of bookkeeping for a second. Let's just dive into a little bit more. Why, I know we talked a little bit about in your bio, but why are you into this industry? Of all the things you could have chosen to do with your life, and more importantly, why are you still in this? Why do you get so excited and passionate about bookkeeping? What is it?
Simon Sinek, when he talks about his why, or your why, mm-hmm. I read Simon's book, and I did his exercise book as well, and went through all that when I was setting up my company. And I just thought bookkeeping was fun, and it's fun for me because I'm OCD. I like that order. I like those neat and tidies, and I like working with the tech factor of the software. And if I can go in and I can set up different rules and some workflows and that type of thing, and then just hit a button and everything just folds like a card shuffler and it all goes into place. I get excited about that. I just totally geek out on that. And I learned, computers and stuff way back, when they first started in high school, and I just loved it. The technology intrigues me, and it's my space. But then I see people come to me, and they're like, "Here's my shoebox. I can't do this. I'm stressed out." And they're, some are in tears because the stress of it, and others are just like, "I can't do this. I'm not good at math, and I just don't know how to do this, and I just don't want to do it." I see those people, and I hear their stories, and I'm like, I know I can do this. But what am I going to do for them? And how are they going to feel at the end? And when a business owner sits back and it's like, "Oh, wow, that was easy. Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you did it and I didn't have to. Thank you for doing this. My accountant was happy. My taxes are happy. when I hear them say those things, to me, that's my greatest compliment. And when you say to me, you give me a referral or you say good things about me, that just sends me over the moon. That pride that I have where, the praise of that, it means a lot to me. And on the other hand, the hard thing is, oh, you didn't do a good enough job for me. That just absolutely kills me when I hear that. But providing that service, that relief for somebody, it's tangible. Like you go, you fill your car up with gas, you drive away. Okay, great, I got gas. But when somebody comes to me and they're genuinely relieved and happy and that stress goes away, that's value to me. That's my why.
It's appropriate you should mention Simon Sinek in that book. We've actually mentioned him and that very book on this podcast before. He's one of my favorite people to listen to. A lot of the things that are in our office, a lot of the things that we do tie into what I've come to realize was my why without really realizing that's what it was. And he's really helped me along too. So I was correct in this. Your why goes beyond just the technical, though, as you called yourself, you geek out when you get to be able to set up a thing and it just all goes according to plan. It's just
awesome.
Awesome, right? But you also, what I heard you say is you see the big picture. You see someone who's in a situation, particularly a business owner who's in a situation that they're finding scared, stuck, confused, worried, and you know that you can help them.
Yeah.
And so you offer an opportunity to help them, and some people will never ever make it to the thank you, but you see enough people, which I think is probably a testament to how well you do it, what you do, come back to you and say, thank you. Thank you, Cheryl, because you made what seemed impossible possible. You took my disaster of a situation, and now I have hope. I have comfort. I feel at peace about where my business is at. And I think that's amazing. So thank you for sharing that. I wanted to bring that up partly so people here could hear that side of you, and partly because I think sometimes we get so caught up in the technical of we having to teach people and stuff that we need to make sure we don't forget about the why are we doing this in the first place.
Exactly.
And I wanted to make sure you had a chance to talk to that. So thank you.
Thanks, Corey.
Now, let's dive back into a little bit of technical. This is a tricky question because I don't want you to feel like you need to endorse one specific product over another. But in the years that you've been doing bookkeeping, and you've said you've been doing it since, what I read in your ledger, or your bio, since ledger cards,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So you've probably seen a vast evolution of software options and AI entering into the picture and so on. If I'm a business owner, whether I'm choosing to do the books myself or I'm going to hire a bookkeeper like yourself to come help me, why is one software worth looking at over another? Are they all kind of just 18 different ways to get to the same spot? What do I want to look for in a software package? How do I decide if I'm using QuickBooks or Sage or Xero? How do I decide if I'm using cloud versus desktop? How would you help someone navigate those decisions?
What do you need it to do? Where do you want it to do it? So if you're a tradesperson or an entrepreneur on the run, and if you want to be able to do an invoice off your phone, just whip open your phone, put your quote in, send it off to a customer, have them approve it, and then send them the invoice, then you need something in the cloud. And that would be QuickBooks, Waves, FreshBooks, some of those ones. Free software is not always the best. Free software means that, to me, free software means that you're getting the basic entry level and you're only getting what they want to give away for free. And then when you end up paying for it, are you going to pay more? Or do you have to continuously go up in steps to get to the level that you want? So you might start off with the free software, which would be great for your budget. But then when you need that paid software, are you going to be paying twice as much as what you would have if you started with a lower priced or a lower entry level software?
Not only that, but you might be trying to proverbially stick a square peg into a round hole, right? You might be locked into the way that particular software does something, which seemed okay when it was free. You didn't care. But now that you want to build a business with specific goals and purposes in mind, even the paid version of that software might be like, well, I'm going to have to now adjust my business to fit what my software can do, as opposed to picking a software that can match what my business needs to do.
Exactly. And then what are your online, what apps are you using? That's my big question, is what are you using to run your business? So do you have a Shopify account where you're selling online, or do you have, everybody pays you through PayPal, Stripe, Square, all these different terms that are out there. And how much work do you want to do to get it into your software? So if you have something that can integrate, or you can find a bridging software that can do the integrations for you, taking that time out of your day where you're sitting there fiddling around with this software and how do I enter this and how do I enter that, if you can set it up in the background where it all talks to each other, which is possible. We've learned a few tricks over the years. But if you set that up in the background and that's all possible to do it like every night at midnight, let's say, it's going to happen. And those things can be done. But you have to pick the right softwares. Not everything talks to each other. There's some softwares out there, they're an online version. They don't integrate with anything except one or two different apps. Like, you have to manipulate your data and upload it. And it's painful. But, some accounting professionals want to say that this is the best software, but is it best for the accountant or is it best for the business owner?
And therein lies an interesting dilemma, isn't it?
And with that, I mainly work with QuickBooks Online. When it first came out, I saw the potential in it. I saw the integrations, and I continuously, every day, we're manipulating the data. And I shouldn't say manipulating it. That's not the best term.
I think everyone here knows what you mean. You're good.
Yeah, we're importing the data, and whether we're importing it through the software itself, whether we're using a bridging software, or whether we're doing that manipulation through an Excel spreadsheet, we do it every day, all the time, and we've gotten the knack of it. To me, that's the only software I'll work with because I know it so well.
Okay.
For a business owner, what do you need the software to do? Do you want budgeting? Do you want to have just invoices, or do you just want to have expenses? Like, what is it that you want? How are you running your business? And what apps are you using to run your business? Then go from there. Right now, if let's say you're brand new and you have nothing, you don't have anything, you just have your cell phone, talk to a professional. So for me, I would recommend QuickBooks Online because it's going to integrate one way or another. We know how to do that. But then if you're wanting to bring in an inventory app, or you need to bring in a payment platform, you want to integrate it with your website, you're a tradesperson and you have trade software that you think you might want to buy, but I'll probably tell you it's not going to integrate, so I'll give you 3 other options to look at that will integrate. And by having those, knowing what those integrations are, what does and doesn't work in the beginning is going to help you in the long run, because it's going to save you time, and it's going to save you money, and it's going to save you a lot of confusion.
Okay. When I was an articling student, the firm I article with was really heavy into one specific accounting or bookkeeping software, and it's not even that the software is that good. The reason they liked it is because it was proverbially, quote unquote, locked down, right? So they liked it because from an auditing perspective, from an external accountant perspective, there's not a lot of things the enter person of the data, whether it's the owner or a third-party bookkeeper, whatever, could do and screw up without them being able to have a clean paper trail of what happened and minimizing what that owner could mess up. And so they'd have a few clients that wanted to use QuickBooks, and they're like, oh no, don't use that. It allows you to change almost everything. And I was like, I know, but take a step back. We're looking at this from the accounting perspective.
Yeah.
Like, I get that, but we're not the owner. We're not in it the day to day. And if I'm an owner that's got to either be entering my own data or I've got a bookkeeper, but one of the reasons I might use software like this because I want to go and look at the data too, it needs to be what's best for me, not what's best for you. Right? So I always was confused by that when we're like, let's not have an owner pick bookkeeping software based on what their accountant prefers. Let's have an owner pick bookkeeping software based on what the owner needs, what the owner is going to find the most effective, user-friendly way to get the information from their business that they want. So I know you mentioned that a little bit, and I appreciate that. Now, we talked a little bit around this concept. Incorporated with a lot of these cloud-based options out there is the opportunity to bring in artificial intelligence, right? So we're going to integrate with other apps, and we're going to, like, even theoretically, you go into QuickBooks Online's website and they talk about, well, this will happen automatically, and we can sync bank feeds, and we can do all these things. What role are you finding, or is it too early to tell yet, that artificial intelligence is having, or you think will have, on the bookkeeping side of things?
It's coming. Artificial intelligence is coming in the software, specifically with QuickBooks. When you start up your QuickBooks and you think it's going to do it itself, that's not true. There's steps that have to be taken. It learns over time, and I don't recommend just starting and letting QuickBooks do it all on its own, because it's software. It's going to look for, like, whatever the algorithm is in the background. Like, if you get an e-transfer one day for $200 and you code that to your shareholder loan, let's say, and then it's going to say, oh, we got an e-transfer one day, and this is how you did it. It's going to copy that same rule, and it's going to do it for all of them, unless you intervene with it and start teaching it what to do. So AI right now in accounting software is still, it's a toddler. It's going to do what it wants when it wants to, and it's going to do what you want when it feels like it. So it's not quite there yet. Right now, the AI is coming. The more you use QuickBooks and the more that AI is used and set up, the better it gets. But even I've seen files that I've had for 7 years, and it still gets things wrong. And it's AI. It's not a human. It's looking for commonalities, the algorithms in the background. It's doing its thing, and it's not always right. So I wouldn't rely on that. It's coming, though.
So we shouldn't fear it, but we should have a healthy respect for it. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely.
Okay. Now, we talked a little bit about this too, but I want to go back and revisit it, and then I want to look at it from the other side. So if I'm a business owner and I'm looking for a bookkeeper, I've determined that I have a budget for one, or I know I need one, and I need a bookkeeper to help me get this all straightened out. What kind of questions should I be asking that potential bookkeeper to know if he or she is going to be good? And let me preface that by saying, in the accounting industry, it's always been frustrating for me that it's not a protected word. And I've rarely seen this in practice, but theoretically, I could have been an oil field worker yesterday, quit my job, lose my job, whatever, and today I could open up a business and call myself an accountant, and I don't have to do anything. I don't have to have had qualifications. I don't have to have any experience or training. The people that are using me don't know any different, and it's not a protected word. I feel like bookkeeper is the same way. I could have been doing basket weaving yesterday and decided I don't want to do that anymore, and I'm going to open up a business and call myself a bookkeeper. But that doesn't mean I know what I'm doing. That doesn't mean I'm going to be what you need. But as a person that doesn't know any different, as a business owner, if you, a bookkeeper, tell me you're a bookkeeper and you can do my job, I'm going to assume you can. So if I'm interviewing a potential bookkeeper, what questions do I need to ask to make sure that they actually can do what they say they can do, and maybe more importantly, they can do what I need them to do?
That's loaded. I've seen bookkeeping done where they basically just take the bank statement and drop it in a chart of accounts. And is it useful? Maybe. Is it going to give the company a long-term database? Probably not. But to ask them what their process is. Our firm, we see every source document from a client. We see everything. Whether it's a fuel receipt or stationery, we see all those documents and we code everything accordingly. Some companies aren't doing that. They're just using the bank feed information, which is the statement, and they're basically categorizing everything off who the supplier is, not necessarily what was purchased. Is that right? Well, Staples is generally office supplies, but Canadian Tire is not always tools.
Mm-hmm.
So there's some things that can be misleading, and then there's assumptions that are made. The other thing is, what's their training? Do they have referrals? Can you talk to their references?
So would that be an appropriate thing to do if I'm interviewing a potential bookkeeper? It'd be okay or appropriate for me to ask them for references?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Right. You're hiring them, so no difference in hiring an employee who's going to work for you. The bookkeeper and an accountant is going to work for you as well. References, by absolutely. Why not? And the other thing too is if you're a people person, you're going to pick up things in the conversation. Is the person right for you? Do you get that feeling that you can work with them? Maybe that's a good way to do it. Maybe it's not, but are they communicating with you in a method that you can understand? So if you go in and you talk to somebody and all you hear is accounting lingo where it's deferred and depreciated and amortized and this and that, and you're like, your eyes are crossing because you have no idea what they're talking about, maybe they're not the person for you. Like, do you want somebody who's going to be like, hey, dude, this month you spent way too much money. Like, we were saving that money for something else. Is that the kind of person that you want? Hiring a bookkeeper, there's no standard in Canada. You can watch YouTube videos and become a bookkeeper and run your business. You can go to one of the universities and get a degree or a bachelor or something like that. But do they know the software as well? Right. So you need you need the knowledge of how accounting works and what the processes are and what is right and what's not right. And then working with the software. So you need those two aspects in a bookkeeper. Plus you need that communication. So those are the three things. So does the person speak to you? Do you understand them? Do they have the technical aspect and do they understand the software?
Okay, so as a business owner, how would I assess whether they have those three things? Like, I could obviously assess by talking to them if the communication side's going to work, but how do I know if they have the technical skill? Or is there really no way to know until you try?
There's no way to know until you try, right? Unfortunately, and that's where references come in. So hiring a bookkeeper versus hiring an employee can be very similar. I would say do your homework, check your references. Do they have accountants that they work with who've seen their work on a technical level? So, find those. To ask them for their other customers. Is there somebody else that I can talk to of your customers? What have you done for them? How have you helped them? Talk to them. If somebody asked me that, I'd say yes. I'd give them a list of people that I would want them to talk to. So.
Okay. Now, I didn't read this part of your bio necessarily, although I alluded to it at the end. You have some certifications. You have some certificates. I don't know what else to call them, but what are some of the designations that you have as a bookkeeper and or that a bookkeeper could have that might give you at least a little bit more assurance that they have done at least enough technical?
When we look at software, we always go and do all the certified training in it. Right? So we want to become proficient in it. We want to know how it works, and then I'll test it. So that's just me. All the software we work with, we've gone through all their training programs, so we get certified in them. I learned accounting from my grandmother, so I'm old school. I've gone to NATE. I've taken the NATE courses. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. The teachers that I had, some were good, some weren't. Some I connected with. What else do I do? I'm a member of the Canadian Professional Bookkeepers of Canada, so that's the CPB, and that is our organization that is trying to create a standard in Canada. So
maybe dive into that for a second if you don't mind. What's involved in getting your credential as a CPB?
You write a test. So they have, a test you do to prove your knowledge. So and how else would you do it, right? I think they should go deeper than that and do auditing on your files to see how you're doing the bookkeeping, not just your knowledge, because how you do your bookkeeping is just as important as what you know. But we're not there yet, and I'm not sure if that's on their radar. But definitely, somebody who's a CPB member, we have to do our CE credits per year, so we have to do continuous training, just like in the accounting field. So we have to do that. I also have a group that we call it Breakfast Club Edmonton, and I'm a co-mentor with a colleague of mine, so we help bookkeepers get better in that area. But yeah, and how are you active in your community? And pricing. I'm going to bring up pricing again.
Yeah, please do.
Because I've seen it. I saw a new ad the other day come up. It was a sponsored ad, and it was, we do bookkeeping, and we do it, but where do you do it, right? Where is it being done? Because they were charging $25 an hour, and they're a Canadian company out of Calgary. And actually, that was an email that I got. And they're $25 an hour. They're out of Calgary. And when I went and looked at their website, I'm like, who are these guys? What's going on? Well, it was obviously being done offshore, right? And for bookkeeping, a business to be charging $25 an hour, like the owner's not getting paid minimum wage for that, or their employees as well are not being paid for that. So, so if that's perfect for you and that's a great situation, then go for it. If it's not, then be cautious of it.
Yeah, good call. So I promise you we're going to look at the other side of this. So this is a chance for you to get what you want. So when you're taking on a new client or considering taking on a new client, so we've looked at it from I'm a business owner perspective. What do I need to look for in my potential bookkeepers? So now we're going to look at it from the bookkeeper perspective. As a bookkeeper, what are you looking for when you want to know if you're going to say yes or no to this potential client? And if you take them on, what are sort of your conditions and guidelines you're going to say, if you want to work with me, here's what you need to do. So this is your chance to get it from your perspective. Just share that with us.
Okay. Well, first is the engagement letter, right? And the scope, defining the scope in the engagement letter. I have 3 employees plus myself, and we've got 40 plus clients. So we've developed a system. So you have to fit into our system. We're flexible, but it has to work that way. Defining the scope of work. So like I said in the beginning, we're not typing your letters, we're not doing your calendars, we're doing your bookkeeping. So all of our clients submit their documents electronically. So they use an app to take a picture with or email their stuff to. And we want them to do it every day, or last thing on Friday, just take all your pictures, whatever their schedule is. But we want to work with them monthly. For us, I feel that provides a better value for the client because they're going to have monthly reports. They're going to be up to date. So ideally, they take a picture, whatever they've uploaded on Friday, we work Monday, Tuesday with. And if they want to go in Wednesday morning, their QuickBooks is probably going to be 90% up to date. So they can see next week where their numbers are. That easy. For us, they have to respond because we're going to go through their list at the end of the month. We're going to send them a list of questions and say, what is this stuff? And if they sit back and like, oh, there's 90 questions, I can't work with this. Like, this is crazy. I'm like, but we have 90 questions because we're missing data. Mm-hmm. If we don't see the data, it's not there, we can't work with it. So the client's got to be able to work with our systems, and we try and keep them easy and simple so it's not frustrating and overwhelming, but they have to work with those systems. And if you're just taking a picture of it or just emailing it, and then at the end of the next month you get your reports and here's your budget, here's your money, this is where it all went, this is what happened, that's what we want. If we have somebody who's going to be, our communication, we prefer email. We don't like text messaging because text messaging is quick and it's easy and it's not always specific. But in an email, we find that we get better information from a client. So if a client just pulls out their phone and say, yeah, that's the blue thing I bought, that doesn't tell us anything. But when we get an email back, people tend to pay more attention or put more effort into an email. So it's better communication. We'll get better answers with that. We want companies who want to know their numbers. Like if they're just, yeah, this is great, fine, whatever, good, you sent me my reports, great, thanks, I got a phone call to make. That's not really my ideal client. I want somebody who wants to know where they're at. If they have a business coach, that's even better because now I know they have a plan. They want to go somewhere with their company. They want to grow it. They want to do something. They've hired that business coach that they're investing their time and money in to help them grow. And with a business coach, we can provide those numbers for them. And now we feel like we're part of their team. We're part of their management system where they're growing their business and they're getting what they want. They're making their why come true.
That's a pretty thorough answer. Again, I'm going to go back to something we've probably talked about before in previous episodes, maybe a little in this one, but if I'm a business owner and I'm looking at 2 bookkeepers I've interviewed, and one charges me $25 an hour and says I can do whatever the heck I want, and one charges me $80 to $100 an hour and has some pretty strict restrictions and rules and guidelines if I'm going to work with them, it'd be awfully tempting for me to want to say, well, I'm going to go with the one that's cheaper and sort of just, hey, whatever you want to do, we'll work with it, right? But going back to that old adage, kind of you get what you pay for. Like if I'm working with someone who has no requirements, they have no restrictions, they have no guidelines, what's not being done? Like what's getting missed? Again, it's easy to look at this restrictive bookkeeping option as restrictive, or you can be like, they know what they're doing. They got a system, they got a plan, they know what I need to do to make sure that they can do their job well so that I can do my job well. And even if they're more money, or even if it requires more effort on my part, I should want to pick the one that's going to have the more specific processes in place than the one that's cheap and says, do it like you want. Right? So I think you might lose out on some clients because you have a system that's pretty specific and pretty robust. But in hindsight, and you probably realized this a long time ago, those are probably the clients you don't want anyways. Right?
True. Yeah, true. There was a fellow last summer, posted on a Facebook group, and he'd written up quite an extensive post. It just wasn't who's a bookkeeper. He wrote up a post with some specific things. I responded and I emailed him and said, hey, this is what we do. And he responded back and said, thank you very much, but I'm going with somebody else. I'm like, great, thanks. Off you go, right? Perfect for you. 8 months later, he phones me. And he's like, hey, you responded. And I'm like, yeah. And I didn't really remember too much. I had to go back and look and find the thread and stuff. And we didn't really chat in detail. I just gave him a list of basically what we did, pricing, that type of thing. And so he came back and said, the person that I was working with, they set up my QuickBooks. They were just charging me $25 an hour, but now they've ghosted me. They're gone, and I have all these questions. And we've been sort of doing it ourselves and sort of not, but we kind of needed them. They were helping, but now they're not. And here they are. And they're 8 months into a brand new first year of a business. He's looking at hiring employees now, and he's got different things he's got to set up and extend his insurance and, all the things that he has to do. And now this person has ghosted him. So he said, I should have went with you in the first place. And I said, no, don't say that, because you went off your gut. You made a decision. And was it right or wrong? That's not for me to say. But he made his decision. He went with it, and it didn't work out. But at least he made a decision to do something. And he's showed up. We're helping him out. He's early enough in his business where it's not a whole lot of work, right? He's not 5 years into a mess where we discovered that they had their income going to an expense account or something like that. The setup was good. We've expanded on a few things so he can get some better numbers that mean more to him. We've changed some wording on some things, and he likes the system. And he's like, hey, this is great now. Hey, I really like what you did. So going with that $25 an hour person, yeah, you might get what you want. In the short term. Yeah. But why? My question is, in this day and age, why is a business or an entrepreneur charging $25 an hour? Like, I pay my dog sitter more than that. So in that question, why? Why is it so cheap? And cheap is not always best.
100%. I think I've mentioned this before in other podcast episodes, but I'm always amazed, and not necessarily in a good way, the amount of posts I see on Facebook or other social media where we'll say, looking for the best blank who's super cheap, or looking for the best blank who doesn't cost very much, or I'm always like, do you understand what it is that you're even asking?
Yeah.
You want the best of the best for the cheapest of the cheap, and those don't coexist. It amazes me how many people ask for that very thing, not realizing that they're asking for basically the impossible.
Well, yesterday I saw one. This guy will do electrical work. He's a master electrician, will work for cash. And I'm like, okay, great. Somebody's, got some extra time on their hands. They're going to do some extra work. That's awesome. But they're an electrician. So they're going to come into your house. They're going to mess with your wires. And do they have insurance? Are they truly a master electrician? Do they have WCB? Like, there's questions there when I myself hire a tradesperson is, do you have insurance? What if my house burns down? What if you fall on my front step? Do you have your own WCB, or are you making a claim on my house insurance now? Like these are questions that we don't often think of the outcome. So somebody shows up, hey, I'll paint your front door, $50. Hey, that might be great. It might not be, but there's consequences to that. And, you have to go with what's right for you. But I don't recommend it.
Now, before we kind of wrap up this episode, and I think you've shared a lot of insight and stuff with us that I think is going to really resonate with a lot of small business owners in particular, and I appreciate you being on here today. If people got nothing else out of today, if they either didn't tune in till the very end, or they kind of listened and didn't really understand or whatever, like if they got nothing else out of today, what would you most want listeners out there to know about the bookkeeping side of things, from your expertise, from your experience? Here's like the top 1 or 2 things. If you learn nothing else today, if you take away nothing else from this last hour or so of a podcast, remember this. What would you say?
Get advice sooner than later. And whatever you do it monthly so you have numbers you can run your business with.
Okay. You were way more prepared for that than I was expecting. Awesome. I have some quotes here now I should back up. I always like to put quotes on the podcast episode. Sometimes we throw them in the middle. Sometimes I throw them at the end. But you'd be surprised when I'm looking up inspirational quotes about bookkeeping. There's not a lot of like top hits that have the words bookkeeping in them. So we had to expand the the search terms a little bit. But there are a couple here that I think drive home some of the points that you've been making that might be worth mentioning here. A funny one that had no author attributed to it was, life is like a balance sheet. One wrong entry could change everything. I found that one kind of funny. One that really made me think, actually, and I don't know who this person is, D. Hawk. I don't even know if that's a male or a female, but I love this quote because it really makes you think. It says, making good judgments when one has complete data, facts, and knowledge is not leadership, it's bookkeeping.
That's awesome.
And I was like, I bet Cheryl's going to like that one. That might be her new favorite mantra that goes on her business wall or something. Yeah, I'm not sure.
And I noticed you put that on number 1. So my favorite of all these ones was Richard Branson's, is never take your eyes off the cash flow because it's the lifeblood of your business. And that is so true. That speaks power to me.
Well, and I guess Richard Branson probably knows what he's talking about. He's been mildly successful in business.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit. Well, this has been an absolute treat. Cheryl, thank you for joining us. In all transparency, I have to tell you that Cheryl was pretty, well, as many people would be, Cheryl was a little nervous to come on when I invited her to come on. But I couldn't think, like I said, I don't mean to have too many bookkeepers that I would hands down refer. I would refer Cheryl in a heartbeat. She's awesome. I love the fact that she's committed, that she has the processes. She knows what to charge based on what she knows she's really good at. And she's going to make you work for what she does for you, but it's going to be worth every ounce of effort and every ounce of cost. And so she was a little nervous when I invited her on, but I think she's done phenomenal. Cheryl, if people want to reach out to you, either they want to ask you questions, maybe they want to have a consultation with you to see maybe if you would be a good fit for their business and helping them with their books, how's the best way to get a hold of you?
Just call me. It's my website is njsolutions.ca. All my information's there. They can email direct from the website. My phone number's there. They can give me a call. I'd be more than happy to chat with them.
Okay. And like I said, Cheryl was a little bit nervous coming in, but she's done a phenomenal job. And so I'm grateful that she's been on here. And she'd probably appreciate your kudos too. We already heard earlier that it's nice to get paid, but her more rewarding rewards come in the form of thank yous and stuff. So if you've learned something, if there's something here has helped you, I invite you to go to Cheryl's website and look her up and send her a thank you or just a positive, uplifting note, and I think that will be amazing. So again, thank you, Cheryl, for joining us. Thank you, everyone, for tuning into our episode today, all about bookkeeping, quote-unquote having numbers you can rely on. This is Cheryl, and I'm Mr. Chill. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Have a great day.
You've been listening to the Business Speak Podcast featuring Mr. Chill. Be sure to subscribe and add us to your podcast library to ensure you never miss an episode. We love hearing from our listeners. If you have a topic or question you'd like us to discuss, would like to be a guest on our show, or would otherwise like to get in touch with us, please visit our website at businessspeak.ca. Thanks for listening to Business Speak, the language of business simplified.